Guys, welcome to Junkyard Theory, and this is episode number 8. Now, this session is not happening live, but it's pre-recorded. Still, I am so excited for this session because the man we are bringing on is a legend in his own right. He is the cinematographer behind the Back to the Future trilogy, The Thing, the Halloween trilogy, and also everyone's favorite, Jurassic Park. And he is also an Academy Award nominee for Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very pleased to welcome Dean Cundey. Dean, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you very much, Akash, for this opportunity.
It's my pleasure, sir.
I'm very glad to be here.
So, Dean, could you tell us a little bit about how you got into cinematography? How did you get into the whole filmmaking side of things? When did you know you wanted to become somebody in the film industry?
Well, I've been fascinated by film since I was a young boy, about, 10, 12 years old. I used to be dropped off at the local cinema when I was very young, and my mother would take myself and 2 or 3 friends on Saturday and drop us, and then she would go shopping. And that's in the days when it was safe to drop your kids somewhere and you weren't considered being a bad parent. So I loved film from that beginning. I loved the idea that there were these people making these films, and while I was interested in the characters and stuff, the story, I actually really liked the idea of the illusion, the magic that these people were creating. The idea that the audience was sitting there and believing whatever was happening, no matter how fantastic. If of course it was a good film.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't, I would say, well, why wasn't it magical? So I decided by the time I was in high school that I wanted to go into film. I had been doing, some cinematography, you might say, early, because I was the family documentarian. When we went on a vacation, I would have my father's movie camera, and I would be shooting, whatever it is we were doing, and family events, birthdays, and things. And then I started making little films myself, little story films. So in high school, I had decided that's what I wanted to do, and I applied to UCLA Film School, and I was actually lucky enough to get in.
Wow.
Now, it's so difficult to get into UCLA and a lot of the others that I probably wouldn't have been able to get in, but I was able to do it. And I had 2 years of intensive training. I had taken my other college classes, so 2 years of intensive training in filmmaking. And at the end of it, I graduated, and I was lucky enough to get a job almost immediately on a film. But I was taking any job I could get at that point. And my first job was doing makeup on a feature film, a very low budget feature film. But it was the opportunity for me to be on the set, to see how it worked, what people did in real life, not just on student films. And so it further encouraged me that this is what I wanted to do. And I knew I really wanted to be in cinematography. So I did any job I could get, but always looking towards what could I do that was, aiming towards cinematography. I would work as a special effects person or an editor or whatever, but it was always about how do I get into the cinematography? And I would take any job that made me closer. And one day I was going to be the gaffer, the lighting assistant to a friend of mine who was shooting a very small, low-budget movie.
Mm-hmm.
And on the morning that we were to begin, I went to the set thinking I was going to be setting lights and he was going to be shooting. And the director came up and said, "Oh, I don't know what to do." Michael, who was the cinematographer, my friend, Michael was in an auto accident last night.
Oh.
He's okay, but he's in great pain and he's hurt himself and he doesn't think he's going to be able to do it. And I don't know what to do. And I said, "Well, why don't I take over for him this first day while you have a chance to look for someone, a replacement." And so we shot the first day. The second day I came back and said, "Did you find anyone?" And Graydon, the director, said, "Well, no, but why don't we just keep going with you doing it while I'll look." And so I did. And
Wow.
at the end of the first week, Graydon came to me and said, "You're not too bad at this. Maybe this is what you should do." And I didn't want to tell him, yes, that's all I've ever wanted to do. I wanted to make him the wise one. So I said, "Oh, well, excellent. Thank you very much. Maybe I will do that." So I shot 5 films for the same director, 5 low-budget films, and
Wow.
gained a lot of experience and made connections, and people saw, I guess, my work and recommended me to others, and I began working as a cinematographer right out of film school almost.
And you owe your career to Michael.
Yes, yes, sadly, and I think he went on to do some other things, but I didn't hear from him after that, and so I've been meaning to maybe do a Google search and see if I can find him.
You probably should.
Yeah.
Dean, I mean, you have such a massive body of work. Your films range from one genre to the other. Like you started off with certain horror movies, then you jumped on to sci-fi, and also to action, comedy. Like it spans a lot. So, how do you think, like as a cinematographer, how do you tackle these different genres?
Well, it's funny because I had done maybe a dozen or more low budget films I started on. And they were action films, I call them girls with machine guns and bikinis, and then something blows up. Those kinds of low budget action films. And then I met John Carpenter and we made Halloween. And when it was a big success eventually, I started getting calls for people who wanted me to shoot their horror films. Everyone else was now going to copy Halloween, because before Halloween there weren't really any horror films. Halloween really started the trend. And so all of these people immediately wanted to begin making their own horror films, and they would call me. And I did a couple, but I realized that I was going to be typecast. I was going to be sort of stuck in the horror film. So I, as difficult as it was, I turned down a couple and looked for something else, and ended up getting, I think, a comedy and then a small musical and all of that, because outside of my reputation, I thought it would be good to get experience in how do you tell different kinds of stories, because it's all about telling a story with the camera. And how do you tell those stories successfully? And so I began taking any other kind of film I could get, and it sort of helped a lot, because then I wasn't defined as a cinematographer who only did horror.
Sure. And as you can see, I am a massive Jurassic Park fan, and I know so many people who got into the business after seeing this particular movie. How did you get this job? How did you get the job as a cinematographer on the movie that would go on to become the highest grossing film at the time?
Well, I had been doing various films with Bob Zemeckis, and a lot of them were produced by Steven Spielberg and his company. So I had this acquaintance with Spielberg. He would come to the set and we would talk and so forth. And then, so one day I got a phone call from a woman who said, Steven Spielberg's on the phone for you. And I said, oh, okay, excellent. And he said he was doing this movie called Hook. And it was going to be an interesting, fantasy kind of film. Was I interested in shooting it? And I, of course, said, well, yes, of course. So I began working with Steven directly as a director on Hook. And as we were about a week or so away from finishing the film, Steven came to me and said, Universal wants me to do this little dinosaur movie. Would you like to work on it? And I said, sure, I've always wanted to work on a little dinosaur movie. And it became, as we all know, a groundbreaking film, because it was the first to use the computer to create photorealistic creatures.
Yeah.
And we pioneered, the techniques, and it was, just a great experience. And as we all know, people went to see it over and over
and over again.
Yes.
Wow. And I mean, the production process, so you had to face the challenge of putting photorealistic dinosaurs in there without probably even knowing what it was gonna look like. And I want to kind of like talk a little bit about aspect ratios and how you put different creatures and like how they change from movie to movie. I think you guys employed a taller aspect ratio on Jurassic Park as opposed to the wider CinemaScope. So how does aspect ratio affect the story that's being told?
Well, I've always been a fan of the wide, anamorphic aspect ratio, 2.4 or 2.39 or whatever people call it.
Yeah.
And because it is, I think, how we as people perceive the world more accurately portrays. We see wider than we do see up and down.
True.
And there are people, I've worked with producers and directors who say, oh, no, we have to use the smaller 1:8.5 ratio because you can't shoot a close-up in this big wide aspect ratio. And I would disagree, because I would say, well, you can still frame a head, but you can put a lot of information on the sides of the frame.
Yeah.
And if you don't want the information, you can find ways to block it, so you control the audience's point of view. So with John Carpenter and a lot of others, we always shot with this 2:3:5 wide aspect ratio. And Stephen wanted to do that for Hook because he felt there were a lot of the boys, the Lost Boys, bigger, backgrounds and environments, the jungles and Neverland and everything.
Yeah.
So when we went to begin prepping in Jurassic Park, he said that he felt that because the dinosaurs were going to be taller than wide, that he would like to shoot it in 1.8:5, and I could see the logic of his reasoning. You can fill the frame with a tall dinosaur easier with 1.8:5 than you can with 2.3:5. I think it would have been nice to have 2.3:5, also, as a choice, because you fill the frame with the jungle and the environment and all of that. But I think it was a good choice because you can, like I say, fill the frame with an imposing creature, and so it worked out okay.
It worked out amazingly.
Yeah, well, people came to see the movie, I guess.
Yeah. So, Dean, you've also, just like with Jurassic Park, you included so many CGI elements or creatures, characters in your movies throughout your career. And the movie that you were Oscar nominated for also included, I wouldn't necessarily call it CGI, but it included characters, 2D characters interacting with the 3D actors on screen, which was Who Framed Roger Rabbit. And to this day, this movie still blows my mind. And I know you guys used motion control, but how did you prepare for, something like 2D characters interacting with the actors on screen?
Well, I had been interested in animation since I was a kid, this 10 or 12-year-old period. So I read all about animation from that time, especially Disney. They published books about how they animated, and I saw all the Disney films. So I had a very good background and understanding of animation techniques, and so forth. So when Bob Zemeckis came to me and said, we're doing this film and it's going to have animated characters pencil drawn, because now, of course, everything is done in the computer.
Yeah.
Pencil on paper animation, which was the classic kind that I had always learned about. Was I interested in working on it? And I said, of course. And I had a little head start, I think, because of my background in animation. I didn't have to learn anything about the techniques and how it was done. I could just apply them to this new technology. And so that's what we did. We photographed the film in VistaVision, which was a very wide aspect ratio, but also the film went through the camera sideways, so you actually shot on a negative, captured twice as large as usual.
Okay.
And then when they did the compositing, they would reduce that and all of the animation that had been shot and all the effects and everything. They would reduce that down to the usual 4perf, as we called it, or 1.8:5. And in doing that, it improved the quality, sharpness, and the grain, and all of the things that you would normally get by compositing and duplicating the film, it disappeared. So it gave the film a very clean look, and it was a very wise choice. And we had to build 2 special cameras from scratch in order to do it. And so it was great. It was great to have everybody on board wanting to do it, with this new technique. And nobody said, "Oh, well, that's going to be too hard. Why don't you just use these regular cameras or whatever?" Everybody said, "Oh, yes, we must do it." So as a result, everybody concentrated and was paying attention to the job. And everybody said, "Well, how can I contribute?" Whether it was from the visual effects down to the mechanical effects guy on the set, to the editors, to all of the animators. Everybody wanted to do something special. And I, of course, wanted to be a part of that. So as a result, we did something that hadn't been done that way before. Now, they'd been making animation, live action compositing films since the silent days.
Yeah.
And Disney had done Pete's Dragon and Mary Poppins and a lot of other films. But nobody had done it with this attention to detail. And Disney at first said, "Well, I don't think it's necessary." But when everybody in charge of it said, "No, we have to do something special," Disney said, "Well, okay, go ahead." And so as a result, we ended up with a film that at the time was way ahead of what it is now. Now, of course, everybody does it, and it's all done in the computer and so forth. But to me, it was such a great experience, and I'm very proud of the fact that we were able to accomplish something that in a way that hadn't been done before.
I think it still stands to this day because like a little while ago, I was showing my DOP, like a few clips, and we were talking about like how it still stands to this day. It's amazing.
Yeah, I think that's one of the rewarding things about a lot of the films I've been privileged to work on.
Yeah.
Roger Rabbit, Jurassic Park,
Back to the Future.
Numerous others. Yeah, Back to the Future. They all hold up today. They all have, the story that's interesting, the characters that intrigues the audience, but the techniques and the technology all are still relevant today. You look at any of the films, nothing in them that says, "Oh, this is very old school."
Yeah. And when it comes to basically visual effects, CGI, this whole blend, you guys used practical effects on the Jurassic Park set as well. Like you guys actually built animatronic dinosaurs and then combined that with CGI to seamlessly blend them together and create something that was never before done on screen. And in recent years, we've noticed that the trend is changing. It's becoming more CGI fueled and driven, and it doesn't necessarily have the same effect. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think that it's possible to do anything, or almost anything, in CGI.
Mm-hmm.
You can do things that are completely impossible in the real world.
Sure.
And I think a lot of times that the guys who do the visual effects, the guys who sit in front of the computers, they say, "Well, the story says this thing should blow up, or this guy should be able to fly and land and do whatever."
Mhm.
But you know what else? I can add to that, and I can make it even bigger and better.
What's that?
And so people start to add bigger and better.
Yeah.
And they get to the point where it's obvious to the audience that what they're seeing is impossible.
Mm.
We all understand the laws of physics about how objects fall and the speed of things and how things blow up and all. We know that just from instinct of having seen real things on films. So when we are given the false version of something, I think we understand that and realize it. And I think it takes people away. While it entertains them, and they say, "Oh, I've never seen that before," it also separates them from the reality.
True.
They know that that couldn't possibly happen, or a human, whether they're a superhero or not, couldn't possibly do that. And I think that one of the things on Jurassic Park we decided was, how do we make sure that whatever we're seeing follows the rules of physics and the real world, and and
Yeah.
of all the animation that was done in CGI was brilliantly done by Phil Tippett, in such a way that all of the creatures move authentically. There's a sense of size and weight. Things like the T-Rex running,
Mm.
the tail waves and it has
Yeah.
weight. And we say, oh yeah, that's the way it would really be, as opposed to, bad animation. So the good animation and that followed what we did with the audio animatronic, or the puppets. They're full-size dinosaurs that were created with rubber skins and painted, and metal skeletons that held them up. And we used those whenever we could. But whenever the dinosaurs had to walk and move and do things that we couldn't do effectively with the puppets, the CGI people took over. But they did it well, because then they followed the rules. They watched whatever the action was with the animatronic ones, and they made the animation and the CGI ones match it. So you're never aware of where the computer ends and the physical world takes up. And I think that's one of those things that I'm very proud about with Jurassic Park, is to watch it and say, well, it still holds up technically.
Yeah.
There are no faults and things where people say, oh, that looks phony compared to now. It all looks real. And to keep up with that, with all of the with the sequels, and I think sometimes they don't. Sometimes the dinosaurs look a little too superhero-y, or impossible. But and it's again the problem with the computer guys who sit in front of their computer and say, you know what we could do, but besides this, let's do this. And as a result, they take it into a world of where they're proving something, but not doing it in such a way that it's effective for the film or the audience.
Gotcha. And you shot throughout your career, like you started off with film, and nowadays most people have switched to digital. Have you as well, or?
Yeah, I remember working on a couple of things, a TV series where normally, not a series, but a TV movie. And I think it was going to be a pilot, but and it was it would normally have been shot on film, but the director wanted to try digital. And so we had these actually pretty big digital cameras that were slow and less effective, but they were okay for being used on television. So I started to get a little experience in the digital world. The fact that you could go over to a monitor and see what it is you were shooting, as opposed to on film, you know, as I often explain, the light that's out there in the scene and the characters and the shapes and everything, they go through the lens and they land on the film, and the film captures that image. And you can't really see it until it's developed and printed, and so it's usually a day or two later when you can find out whether the choices you made were good ones or not.
Yeah.
Did you make any mistakes? Was something you did exceptionally good? Were there mistakes that made it better? Accidents and things, So it was a process of constantly learning what film could capture and how it did it and so forth. Digital now makes it possible to aim the camera and run over to the monitor and see exactly what you're getting. In some ways, that's a big help. At first, it was a little bit disconcerting because everybody would go over to the monitor. It was a new thing. Oh my gosh, let's go over and see what it looks like. And the director would look at it and say, well, it's not going to be that dark back there. And you'd say, no, we haven't added the light yet back there. Oh, okay. But what is this in the frame over here? Oh, that's just one of the lights that we haven't set up yet. Oh, okay. And everybody would be second guessing. If you accidentally left the camera aimed away because you're doing some setup or something, the prop guy would run over to the monitor and say, oh, I didn't know we were going to see that part of the room. We're seeing off the set. Maybe I should address it, and everybody sort of became concerned because it was a new vision. But now I think everybody, understands the process, and they go check the monitor when it's important, but otherwise they stay away and let people do their job.
Yeah. With the advent of digital technology and digital cameras, it's made it a lot easier for people to actually make films. And now you can see people actually making movies with their smartphones or their iPhones, whatever. So
absolutely.
How do you see independent filmmaking progressing, with the times?
Well, it's one of those things. Whenever I lecture at a film school or university about film, I always caution the students, because in the old days you had to get a camera with it was expensive to buy the film, it was expensive to develop it and print it. And it wasn't until, like I say, maybe a couple days later you could see it. And you had to be very careful with only shooting what you could afford, shooting what you needed, and so forth. Now everybody has a digital camera in their pocket, and they're getting pretty good. And the new iPhone has 3 different lenses, but before, there was only one lens. So I think what it did is that it started to give people too much confidence. Even producers on shows where you were using professional digital cameras to make a feature, they would come over and you'd have the camera set up before you started lighting, and they said, well, we can see everything. Why do we have to light it? Let's just go. And you say, well, it's just the light coming through the window. And he says, yeah, but we can shoot now. And so you have to be careful that you don't let this too easy world of digital and your iPhone take you away from the creative control of creating a visual storytelling, painting with the light and making the scene dark and scary, or natural looking, or for period films, you don't have lights, so you have to make sure people believe what they're seeing. And so I think that we have to be careful that we don't get led too far down this path of it's so easy, and even film students, I taught at a university where they had a film contest, a film festival, and you had to make a short film on your iPhone. And so as a result, everybody sort of said, well, okay, I'll just capture this image with my phone, and that must be what it is. Oh, look, I can see everything. Why do I have to have lights? So it can be, that's the kind of thing that says, no, what you're going to learn is where to place the camera and tell a story visually, but you're not necessarily creating mood. And if you are creating mood, you have to do it because it's very thoughtful. You just have to say, oh, I'm going to close all of the other windows except this one. Or I'm going to close all the windows and turn on that one table lamp in the corner because I want the mood to be dark and spooky, or whatever. So I think that we have to be careful that we don't lose all of the control and the thought and the painting that we've always done up till now out of necessity, because we think we don't need to do it anymore.
I really like what you said, that added up to the fact that just because you can point a camera and shoot something doesn't necessarily mean you are making a film. Because
that's correct.
So many people own cameras nowadays, and I think there's this distinct difference between being a videographer and a filmmaker. So
correct.
As a cinematographer, how do you approach the storytelling process? Like, once you get the screenplay, how do you break it down in such a way you're like, okay, these scenes we're going to shoot it this particular way, the mood's going to be like this, but in this we're going to be using motivated camera moves for such and such. How do you break that process down?
Well, I think in the world of dramatic filmmaking, telling stories, it begins with a story, whether it's a script or whether as a filmmaker it's in your mind. But hopefully it's a script, because that allows everyone to see the story that is intended.
Yeah.
And you read the script, and you have to be able to see the movie in your mind. You have to be reading this, say, oh, this would be very effective with a wide shot that's very high, and then a close-up, and then an insert of the girl opens the drawer and there's the gun. And it's all about how do the images tell the story. And so by visualizing the movie, and hopefully as the director, you're able to do this. Now, not all directors, sadly, do that. I think we as cinematographers are trained and made to work in that way. We understand that visuals are how you tell the story.
Yeah.
And not all directors do that. Some of them come from the world of words. Some of them come from the world of actors. And it's a case of, for cinematography, learning how much you can help a director if he doesn't understand visuals, or if he does, you're both on the same page, and how do you help each other tell the story even better. So I think that it's a case of understanding the story, how to tell it visually. What is the mood? Is it dark? Is it bright and happy comedy? Is it, a period film? Whatever it is. And how do you get the audience to see that, empathize, believe, and understand what the intention is? What is the story, and who are the characters, and the mood, and all of that? And it's important as filmmakers, directors, cinematographers, and of course everybody, to collaborate and understand how the story should be told for that one particular script that you're working on.
Brilliant. And how far do you work with, storyboards and shot lists? Do you employ this quite often, or is it something that depends on, project to project?
It's project to project. Some directors rely heavily on storyboards to help them visualize. Mm-hmm. But it depends where the storyboards come from. I've been on films where they say we're going to need storyboard artists to help the director see this. And so they take the script and they hand it to a storyboard person. And the storyboard guy sits down and makes the movie with his drawings, except he's making his own movie.
Yeah.
It isn't necessarily the director's. And unless the director is there to say, oh, this is good, but I want to have a very wide shot here. And then this one really should, we don't see the character until he enters, and, and offer his or her view of how a scene or the movie should be. Mm-hmm. So storyboards are good. They help visualize, especially for, special effects sequences, CGI stuff.
Yeah.
All of the people who are going to be involved have a chance to see the kind of shot. And that's where it's even more important for the director to make sure that the storyboards reflect his or her, point of view, so that everybody who then begins working on the scene or the shot knows what it's going to be or should be. So I think that storyboards can be very helpful if they are kept in perspective, kept, with the understanding that they are guidelines. Yeah. And then, because it is possible, and very often, what has happened with like filmmakers like Bob Zemeckis. Bob will have maybe a few storyboards for some particular scene, an action scene, because the second unit is going to be involved. But for the most part, you can quite easily go into, a sequence, the set, with the actors, and you block it out. What is logical? Why would the character go over there?
Yeah.
And then as you watch the scene develop, you say, oh, it's important we see his expression here when he's turned away from the girl. So that requires him to come forward and turn to the camera, and what's the reason he should do that? And you work that out with the actors. And you can work on the set and accomplish the same thing. And very often on the set, I will walk around to somewhere where the director isn't standing, just to get different perspectives on possible shots or blocking ideas. And then once it's all sort of decided, once the scene is decided and approximately what the shots are going to be, I then start making an overhead view of the set with the characters in position for various moments. One character here, and then a little dotted line that says he goes over here. And then I start to mark camera positions with a simple little V that shows the direction. And that, to me, becomes the reminder of, oh yeah, we intended to get a shot over here, or it's essential that we get the, the shot of the drawer opening with the gun in it, or whatever it is. So it's, I look at storyboards as being an interesting kind of tool, but it shouldn't be held as, absolutely the only thing. I've worked a few times with directors who don't have the ability to visualize, and they admit that. They can't read the script and see all of the shots and everything. So sometimes they use the storyboards drawn by somebody else because they can't really draw. I always recommend to film students, if you're going to be a director, learn how to draw. Take a class in drawing or something so that it makes you feel comfortable, even if they are just crude representations of the human face. At least we know it's a close-up, and don't use like stick figures and things like that. So I'll work with a director who has trouble visualizing, and then when they get to storyboards, that's how they've seen the movie. That's how they visualize it. So now you'd say, there's a better chance if when he walks over here, he can be in his own close-up. And then when he turns, we see that the girl is upset. And, wait. Now the storyboards just have two separate shots. And we say, yeah, but we can combine it. It'll speed up the process, but it's even more dramatically interesting. No, I understand the storyboard, so let's just do that. And immediately the director has sort of limited themselves to, something that's less effective.
As a filmmaker myself, what I employ is, I also storyboard for the most part, and I also use shot lists as a way of, preventing myself from forgetting to get enough coverage. So, but at the end of the day, when we do go on set, sometimes, most of the time, it ends up being just a guideline, and we simply sometimes chug it out, and we improvise on set. But at the same time, the shot list especially stands as a tool to help us achieve and basically cover everything that we need to get in the edit. What are your thoughts on shot listing?
I think they can be helpful. Sometimes the director worked with, and especially new ones, they'll say, okay, I've made a shot list. Here it is, everybody. And they'll hand it out. And it'll say, wide shot, the guy comes through the door. Medium shot, the girl. Close up of this, and that becomes the same as storyboards that may not be exactly accurate. And they're harder for the other people to understand.
True.
It says two shot, but how wide is it? Are we going to see the desk? Do I need to have all of the things on the desk, or So the storyboards can be a little more accurate representation of the intention of each shot. To me, the shot list is a good tool for the director to keep track of.
Exactly. Yeah.
And because if the director has made the shot list, he or she knows what the intention of each shot is better than other people who just get the shot list. So I think it's important that shot lists are considered to be a checklist for the director, not as I've had sometimes. A director will hand out the shot list and say, okay, here's what we're going to do today. Okay, everybody go. And presumably everybody can see the same movie as he does in his mind. So that, you know, it doesn't really become helpful. It's just a list of shots. And sometimes I've even had directors who say close up of the girl, and then wide shot of the guy comes in the door, and then close up of the girl, and then medium shot of the door opens in the closet, and then close up of the girl. And so the close up of the girl is at 3 shots. So you get down to the bottom of the list, and there are 48 setups or 56. And you say, well, we can't shoot that many in a day. And then you go down the list and say, okay, wait, close up of the girl appears 6 times. Okay, that's all the same shot. We'll cross off the other 5, you know, and then you realize it's easier than, because the director was cutting the movie in his mind. You know, he was reading the script, and it says the girl reacts, and then the guy comes in, and the girl is afraid, and then the guy goes over to the bookcase, and the girl follows him and watches him go, and she's even more afraid. And you know, well, as the director is seeing that movie in his mind, he's writing down all of the shots. So shot lists have to be done with understanding and intelligence, I think.
True. And you're kind of coming towards the ending, like it's an hour's length, this what I can actually put up on Instagram, but I will put a longer version up on Facebook and wherever I can. So the next question that I have is, you know, film and fiction, basically narrative fiction, narrative filmmaking, they show us things that don't necessarily exist in reality just yet. But sometimes, you know, you wait a few years down the line, and then eventually certain things end up becoming reality. Does it, or does it not bother you that certain things in your films might actually end up becoming true?
No, it's actually, it's kind of fun to look back. For instance, Back to the Future 2, I think it was, where Marty has his family and his son, and Marty's son comes into the house and goes over to the TV, which is a flat screen hanging on the wall, and he straightens it, and then he says, turn on channels 2 and 6 and 8 and 4, and all of these windows pop up. At the time, there was no such thing as a flat screen TV. It's you know, hard for kids. What, a big box? Why was that? You know, the flat screen is just the way TV now. Well, that was an invention of Bob and Bob, the writers, to think that a TV would ever be flat. Now, to do that, we had to build a very elaborate rig with a video projector and a hole in the wall, and we hung this screen on it. In order to straighten it and have the images stay the same, the frame was attached to this rod that held the video projector, and so it would all turn. It was a very, very complicated situation in order to create the illusion that there were things like flat screen TVs. Didn't exist. So when the writers, when Bob and Bob come up with a lot of things like that come true, you know, you have to watch a movie and say, well, okay, if they had flat screen TVs in this movie and that came true, I bet those flying cars aren't far behind.
Fair enough. But what about dinosaurs and aliens, shape-shifting aliens?
Yo, yes, how about them? So, who knows? When when Jurassic Park came out, I live in Pasadena, which is near Caltech, which is
Hmm.
the ultimate school for technology and science and everything.
Yeah.
And so I was invited to come to a presentation. It was myself talking about this film that had just come out, Jurassic Park, and how we portrayed the dinosaurs and created them.
Hmm.
And the idea that they were grown from old prehistoric DNA that they
Hmm.
extracted from the mosquito. And on the other side of the stage next to me was a guy who was one of the premier biological researchers, and he was talking about the realities of that kind of possibility, whether we would really be able to ever extract DNA.
Hmm.
And he said, we can't do it now, but the same people who invent these stories about dinosaur DNA coming to life are the same kind of people who sit in a laboratory and invent the same kind of stories in their mind. And they say, well, we're not going to use rubber puppets and CGI. We're going to use actual DNA. Let's see if we can do it. So it's to me, it's always a fun thing to be part of a film that uses human imagination to create
Mm.
a world or an event or something,
Yeah.
and then find out that it's come true, whether it inspired somebody or whether the movie was inspired by somebody who said we're working on this. It's still um, it's still the same creative crossover with human creativity and the human mind coming up with all kinds
Sure.
of
Yeah.
interesting things about the present and the future.
Amazing. Also, you work with so many people throughout the years, people like Spielberg, Robert Zemeckis, and in 2010, you also shot the action comedy The Spy Next Door, working
Ah,
with another
yes,
legend, Jackie Chan.
right. Yes, indeed.
And how was that experience like? I mean, you covered dinosaurs, flying cars, everything, and then you come face to face with somebody who comes from an entirely different background, which is like Hong Kong cinema.
Yeah.
How did you manage to,
I've been very fortunate from that standpoint,
yeah,
um, because it's not just about making films that are uh, doors in the future, but it's also about films that are about contemporary people and characters and possibilities and actions and stories. So it was to me a huge um, fun experience, but also a great honor to work with Jackie Chan, who had put his own amazing touch. You know,
yeah,
there was kung fu movies and martial arts movies, and it's been used for decades as part of a story. You can look at things that go back to the 40s and so forth, and
yeah,
see that there's that same kind of action. But Jackie was a very unique martial arts talent. He was able to take something that was so serious
mm,
um, and used for very particular purposes and turn it into entertainment, into fun, into not take himself or martial arts too seriously. And so it was a lot of fun watching his creative process, working with him, talking to him, sharing lunch with him, all of those things too. Because there's a guy who is, a legend in filmmaking, who created really kind of a genre of film, and to see how he thought and how he accomplished some of his amazing things.
Time travel movies have changed quite a lot since Back to the Future came up, and they basically, the contemporary time travel movies, they've picked up where Back to the Future kind of left off. What are your thoughts on the more recent time travel movies?
Well, I think time travel has always intrigued us as people, as viewers. We like to see movies that take us back in time to, was it 1 million BC was the name of the movie about people and dinosaurs at the time, even though people and dinosaurs didn't exist together. But we were fascinated with being able to go places in a movie that we can't go in reality. So I think time travels. You look at the H.G. Wells movie, The Time Machine, and things like that. They all were intrigued by the fact that we can go back and manipulate time. We can experience things, that we can't in real life. So whatever a film can do, time travel movies are sort of one of the essential aspects of our imagination. And so I think that we're always looking for new ways to tell stories, new ways for an audience to become intrigued. If we told the same story over and over, then we would become bored. Even though they say there are really only 7 plots, 7 storylines that
are rehashed over and over
again. Reformed and made fresh. And the good ones are the ones that take an imaginative approach to telling the same story. Well, time travel is the same kind of thing, going somewhere we can't in real life.
Sure.
We can't do that. But who knows, maybe in the future. However, I digress. So time travel movies are one of those things, and I think that we're always looking for a new twist, or we should be. We don't want to see the same time travel movie. And Back to the Future was time travel, but it had the added, idea that who wouldn't want to go back in time and fix something that went wrong, or go back in time accidentally, as Marty does. He's driven, and find out that he's made a mistake or something that is affected, and now he's got to fix it. And so it's one of those great dramatic quandaries that we have. And I think time travel movies allow us to do that because it takes us somewhere we recognize, or into the future, somewhere that we don't recognize, and we want a glimpse of what does somebody think it's going to be like. How can you as a viewer deal with that? Is it too scary, or
could you go ahead with it?
Yeah. Does it make you think, oh yeah, I better be careful with what I do because it could affect this or that,
Yeah. Next question. What's your favorite memory on set?
Oh, favorite memory. That
Tough
would
one.
be impossible. That would to be because I have so many
First one
great
off the
memories.
top of your head.
Um, well, some of my favorite memories are the people I've been able to work with,
Mm-hmm.
actors, directors, um, the stories I've been involved with. So in a general sense, I've been very fortunate to work with some of the great creative actors, um, directors, but even behind the scenes, some great creative production designers and so forth, and to see how we as filmmakers, but even just as basic humans, how can we make something that doesn't really exist and get an
Mm.
audience to believe it, using our understanding of that. So working with all of those people is in general, I think, my greatest memory. It's you know I enjoyed very much making Apollo 13
Mm-hmm.
because it was a film that we all, as an audience, as people, citizens, we know how it happened and came out, but
Yeah.
to create it from the standpoint of making an audience believe it, to me was one of the great kinds of memories I have. But you know, I don't. I honestly don't think there's any film. Well, there's very few films that I don't have some kind of good memory about it. Even the worst film, there was something um, that was part of what made it, um, you know, very interesting to me and pleasurable.
And something that I really resonate with, I was going to ask you this before, but I read up somewhere, I think it was on IMDb, one of your quotes, you say that one of the most amazing things being in the film industry as a cinematographer is knowing that you will live on in the work that you've done long after you've gone. And to me as well, like as a filmmaker, it's reveling, and it's about knowing, having confidence in the same fact that we are creating something that's gonna outlive us. What advice would you have, with relation to the quote that you said? What advice would you give people wanting to get into the film industry? What sort of encouragement would you give them?
Well, yeah, two things. One is that the fact that able to work on films that will stay around,
Mm.
and while I'm certainly not as visible or memorable as a great actor or a famous director, we we still watch and marvel at works by Alfred Hitchcock
Yeah.
and John Ford and some of these people who did really very interesting specific work that lasts a long time because it uh, touches us as humans to
Yeah.
empathize with the plight of the main character or go through the drama. So I think that that's a satisfaction of mine to know that maybe there'll be some people who remember it, but at least if they don't know who I was or care, at least they will see a film in the future and enjoy it. And I'm always intrigued by the fact that Jurassic Park and the Back to the Futures um, are films that when I'll go to a convention or something that is about fans in a cult convention, and there are young kids who weren't alive when the movie came out who come up and say, "Oh, it's one of my favorite movies. I love the thing where the dinosaur goes like this or whatever. To know that, sometimes three generations of people have seen and reacted to the films that I've done. And so hopefully, if we still have films in the future, that we, people will see them and get something from them. And I can feel that my short time here on in this world was not wasted. That I was able to do something that some of which I'm proud of, and the others I would try to hide.
And what words of encouragement would you give to youngsters basically wanting to come into the industry?
Well, I give advice to film students that if they're seriously interested in becoming a filmmaker, they have to, first of all, have passion. They have to do it because they want to do that more than anything else. There's a difference between being in the world and saying, well, I need to have a job so I can, buy a car or, go out with my friends or whatever. So a job is something that you do for a particular reason. And for some people, that's an extremely important thing. For filmmakers, as with a lot of artists and writers and anybody who's part of this, peripheral part of human experience called creativity or sharing stories or making up things, it takes a different kind of approach. You have to do it because nothing else matters. And I look out at a crowd of students, I'll be lecturing to like 40 of them, and then I'll work with them on a student film. And you realize that out of 40 people, there are maybe 2 that have the desire, the drive, and the creativity to succeed. And the others, they will learn something from this, and maybe they learn appreciation of film, but there are, 2 that are really dedicated. Now, the advice I give to film students is 3 things. One, besides being passionate and, not taking no for an answer from anybody, you have to want to do it, and you have to be dedicated from the standpoint that you will take any job you can get. Any job, you can't say, well, no, load the truck with lights. No. I'm a director. No, I'm a writer. I don't want to get my hands dirty carrying equipment around or working on the set or being a production assistant or whatever. No, you have to say, any job I do, I will learn from it. Any job I do, I will make myself valuable, I hope. I will make contacts, so they're all little steps towards somewhere. Also, when someone says, hey, would you like to work as a production assistant or as a grip or whatever, you say yes. You don't say, well, how much are you going to pay me? Because that tells them you're not interested in the creative work. You are interested in the money. And, they want to think that you are working on their film because it's the greatest piece of art ever, that you are dedicated to it because you want to contribute to the greatest piece of art ever, not because you need some money to go, to McDonald's or whatever. Then you give, when you're working 110%. You do more than is expected. If somebody has to stay behind and pack up the equipment, be the one who volunteers. Don't be the person who says, oh my God, look, what time is it? It's been 8 hours. We can't work more than 8 hours, so I have to go home now. Or no, I can't lift those things. If the thing is too heavy, you go say, let me go get someone to help and accomplish the job. Give 110%. They will remember you because you didn't ask how much. You said, oh, I don't care, 110%. And I took this very menial job because I want to make the greatest piece of art ever.
Wow.
And it's very simple. All you got to do is follow those 3 things.
That's amazing.
And you become amazingly famous and wealthy.
I think that's the best advice anyone's ever given on this show. So, man, thank you so much for that, Dean.
Well, of course.
Dean, thank you so much for coming on the session. This has taken place like halfway around the world, and it's not every single day that we have someone who's worked on a movie that we grew up with as children, and a legend in his own right. People, that's it today for Junkyard Theory, and I will see you guys with the next session. Dean, thank you so much again.
Well, thank you very much. I'm amazed that we can do this. We can talk face to face halfway around the world, and I hope I've been able to offer some viewpoint, some opinions, and some advice to the people that you reach out to.
More than expected, sir. Thank you so much again.
Thank you.